Hi, welcome to day 4 of Anne Boleyn week. Today I'm going to be delving into the lives of two courtiers who got caught up in Anne Boleyn's fall in the spring of 1536 and who sadly lost their lives. Today I'm talking about Sir Francis Weston and William Brereton. Sir Francis Weston was born in around 1511 and was the son of Richard Weston, a former Under-Treasurer of the Exchequer, and Anne Sandys, who'd served as one of Catherine of Aragon's ladies. By 1526, when he was about 15 years of age, Weston was serving as a page at Henry VIII's court. In 1532, he was appointed as a gentleman of the Privy Chamber, and in the following year he was made joint governor of Guernsey with his father. During the celebrations for Queen Anne Boleyn's coronation in 1533, Weston was dubbed a Knight of the Bath, and it's clear from the rewards he received from the king that he was a royal favourite. We know from the king's privy purse expenses that, like his fellow courtier George Boleyn, Weston would often play tennis, bowls and card games with the king. For example, in 1530, the king paid Weston 16 angels after Weston beat him at tennis 4 times. In May 1530, Weston had married Anne Pickering, and in 1535 they had a son, Henry, presumably named after the king. Although Weston was married, it appears that he'd taken an interest in Madge Shelton, one of the Queen's ladies, the same Madge being courted by Sir Henry Norris. Just after Anne had been taken to the Tower of London, she recalled a conversation that she'd had with Weston. She was rambling, speaking out loud, as she tried to figure out why she was in the Tower and which men she was accused of being involved with. She remembered that she'd accosted Weston because he loved Madge and not his wife. Weston replied in a typical courtly love fashion that he loved one in her house better than them both. She asked who, and he replied, "It is yourself," at which Anne said she defied him, meaning she rebuked him. None of this is at all odd. A knight was supposed to flatter and woo his queen, and she was meant to scorn him. However, this innocent flirtation, this courtly love, would be Weston's undoing. Unfortunately for Weston, the ladies serving Anne in the Tower were acting as spies, and Anne's words were recorded and passed on to Sir William Kingston, Constable of the Tower of London. Kingston was writing daily dispatches to Thomas Cromwell and so passed on the information to him. Weston was arrested on the 4th of May 1536 and thrown in the Tower of London. Weston's parents and his wife were beside themselves at the news of his arrest and imprisonment and made strenuous attempts to save him, offering the king money in return for his life. The French ambassadors Antoine de Castelnau, Bishop of Tarbes, and Jean Sieur de Danteville also tried to intervene, but nothing could save Weston. The final man to be executed in the fall of Anne Boleyn was William Brereton. Brereton was the 6th son of a leading landowning Cheshire family. He was born somewhere between 1487 and 1490, making him older than Henry VIII, and he was the son of Sir Randolph Brereton of Malpas, Chamberlain of the County Palatine of Cheshire. He followed 3 of his brothers into royal service, and by 1524 was serving Henry VIII as a groom of the Privy Chamber. In around 1529-1530, Brereton married Lady Elizabeth Savage, widow of Sir John Savage of Clifton, Cheshire, and daughter of Charles Somerset, 1st Earl of Worcester, the king's second cousin. William Brereton was an important man. Anne Boleyn's biographer Eric Ives describes him as the dominant royal servant in Cheshire and North Wales, due to his wealth, his royal grants and his father's power in Cheshire. In 1530, following the death of his father, he became Chamberlain of Chester, and by that time he already held a host of offices and positions in the region. Also in 1530, Brereton and Thomas Risley were chosen to ride around England to collect signatures for the petition to be presented to the Pope in support of the king's quest for an annulment of his first marriage. That same year, he accompanied the king and Anne hunting. We know this because in September of that year, the king had to pay a farmer 10 shillings for a cow killed by greyhounds belonging to Anne and Brereton. The following year, Brereton was chosen by the king to deliver jewels to his sweetheart Anne Boleyn, and like Norris, Brereton may have been present at the king's secret marriage to Anne in January 1533. Following the annulment of Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine of Aragon, Brereton was made Receiver General in Cheshire and Flint to Catherine, who was now Dowager Princess of Wales. He was listed as one of those who attended Anne's coronation celebrations when Henry VIII dubbed around 50 knights bachelor. Brereton seems to have had a bit of a dark side. He appears to have used his position, like many in those times, for his own gain. John ap Griffith Ayton, his former deputy, accused Brereton of various offences, including the robbery of cattle and even the murders of 3 people. Brereton denied the charges and accused Ayton of one of the murders instead. Ayton was acquitted by a court in London, but then rearrested, imprisoned, and eventually hanged. This was all down to Brereton, apparently, so he had blood on his hands. As I've said, just like his contemporary Sir Henry Norris, William Brereton was a powerful and influential man, and he appears to have made an enemy of Thomas Cromwell. Cromwell had plans for administrative reform in North Wales, and Brereton opposed them. With his colourful reputation, he was perhaps an easy target for Cromwell, and Anne's fall was the perfect opportunity to get rid of a man who was a thorn in Cromwell's side. However, even though Cardinal Wolsey's servant, George Cavendish, wrote of Brereton's persecution of the innocent and his bad ways, he concluded by saying, if any of them was innocent, it was he. Sir Francis Weston and William Brereton, along with Sir Henry Norris and Mark Smeaton, were brought before a special commission of Oyer and Terminer at Westminster Hall on the 12th of May 1536. George Boleyn, Lord Rochford, as a member of the nobility, and his sister, Queen Anne Boleyn, were to be tried separately in the court of the Lord High Steward of England by a jury of their peers. Weston, Brereton, Norris and Smeaton had little hope, and I would go as far as saying no hope whatsoever, of any justice. The jury they faced can only be described as hostile, apart from Thomas Boleyn, Earl of Wiltshire, the Queen's father, who must have felt like he was in hell. The majority of those on the jury were either hostile to the Boleyns or owed the King or Cromwell a favour. I can imagine the defendants looking at the jury and their hearts sinking to their boots. They were doomed. We do not have a full record of the proceedings, but the Imperial Ambassador Eustace Chapuis wrote, "Only the groom confessed that he had been 3 times with the said Putin and concubine. The others were condemned upon presumption and certain indications without valid proof or confession." And by groom there, he's actually talking about Mark Smeaton. An account in Letters and Papers states, the jury returned a verdict of guilty and that they have no lands, goods or chattels. Judgment against all 4 as in cases of treason, execution to be at Tyburn. The axe was turned towards them to symbolise their judgment, and they were taken back to the Tower to await their deaths. Thankfully, in the coming days, their sentences, which were to be hanged, drawn and quartered at Tyburn, were commuted to beheading. I'll be back tomorrow to tell you about their awful executions and about 2 men who were also imprisoned that May, but later released. If you want to know even more about Anne Boleyn, I invite you to register to get instant access to 2 events I ran in the past: The Fall of Anne Boleyn and Anne Boleyn, the Woman Who Changed England. There are so many expert talks to enjoy, and you can find out more on claireridgway.com. If you register for either of those, you get instant access. I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.